My name is Nick Bielostowski, and I'm going to be presenting this webinar today. It's on the QuickBooks online integration for Chargify. We are recording this webinar, so we will have a copy available of this probably later on this week once we get it, recorded and saved and edited and everything like that. So that will be available if you need it. We are going to be going over a few key points through this whole webinar. First, we'll talk about how the integration works. From there, we'll talk about what gets synced from Chargify to QuickBooks Online. Next, we'll talk about the QuickBooks setup. So there's a few items that need to be taken care of in QuickBooks before you start the integration. Then we'll talk about setting up the actual integration within Chargify. We'll go through some examples from there within the PowerPoint and also within the QuickBooks interface. We'll go through some allocation examples and some product renewals, that sort of thing. We'll talk about pricing, and then at the very end, we'll open up the floor to questions. So if you can hold off until the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and answer any questions that may come up from it. So first things first, we'll talk about how it works. It's a one-way sync from Chargify to QuickBooks Online. That means we're kind of like the master of records, and anything that occurs in Chargify, not anything that occurs, but anything that's called a paid sale, which we'll cover here in a moment, will get synced from Chargify to QuickBooks. This means that if you make any edits to, say, like the customer record in QuickBooks Online, you'll want to make sure that you go into Chargify and make that edit as well. The way we match is going to be on email address. That means if you have an existing QuickBooks account and you have existing customers in there, we'll match on email address. If it's a brand new QuickBooks Online account, we'll just go ahead and create those customers, and then from then on out, we'll match on email address. Each line item in Chargify will get synced over to QBO. So let's say on a renewal, you have a quantity component allocation, you have a one-time charge, you have that was set to accrue, you have the renewal period. Each one of those items will get synced to QuickBooks, and you'll see examples of this here in a little bit. Discounts, so coupons will also be synced over as well, and you'll see the percentage discount and the amount that was discounted. If it's enabled in QuickBooks, taxes will be synced over. We sync items as they occur. So this is actually using one of our a new API endpoint we have called the sales receipt API endpoint. So we're not using webhooks to do these syncs. That means that we have a little bit more reliability in, if something were to occur with the sync and it were to get delayed, we're able to go back through and find what the last sales receipt that was synced over, and then sync everything from that point on. So about every 5 minutes, everything will get synced over into QuickBooks. So let's talk about what gets synced. We'll sync everything that we consider a paid sale, and that will get moved over as a sales receipt into QuickBooks. Paid sale, to kind of sum it up, and I'll go through some examples of what is and what isn't paid sale, but to sum it up is if a payment was collected either external or through your actual gateway in Chargify, that will get synced over to QuickBooks Online. Some examples is just a standard renewal that gets paid right away. Mid-period component allocation, that's not set to accrue, but it's set to, you charge them right away for that allocation. So during the dunning process, if finally they update their card and they pay, that will get synced after that payment has gone through successfully. One-time charges that are charged right away, and then payments made against invoices will also get synced over. Some examples of things that are not included as paid sales and won't get synced. Charges that haven't been actually moved for an actual successful payment. So declined credit card transaction that would move the subscription into dunning. You won't see that get synced over until they successfully pay that renewal period, and then that will get synced. Prorated downgrades that give money back. One-time charges that are set to accrue. So, if you're doing a one-time charge, you can either charge now or you can have it charged at the next renewal. If you do the option to charge at the next renewal, it of course won't get synced until the renewal occurs and they actually pay that one-time charge. And then invoices that have been generated but no payments made against them, those won't sync because, again, no payments have been recorded on those. Next, we'll kind of talk about some items at a high level that need to be enabled in QuickBooks, and then I'm going to go into QuickBooks and actually enable these. So these next 3 slides are kind of at a high level, and then we'll go in and show the exact steps you need to take to enable these. The first is if you charge sales tax, you're going to want to enable that in QuickBooks Online. Once that's enabled, you'll see as your sales receipts sync over, items get marked as taxable and the tax rate that was applied and the total amount collected. If you are going to be syncing multiple sites into QuickBooks Online, you'll likely want to enable classes, which you do so in the advanced settings. And then once that's enabled, it'll either show up on the overall transaction or per line. Either one can be used. Again, we're going to cover that here in a moment. And then the last bit is we do support the multi-currency option in QuickBooks Online. You'll need to enable it. And then once enabled, you're able to sync over any number of sites that have different currencies. So if you have a US site and you have a site that collects the euro currency, you'd be able to sync both into the same QuickBooks Online account. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of the PowerPoint here and dive into how to set these up in QuickBooks to get these enabled before we set up the integration in Chargify. The first one is setting up taxes. You'll do so by once in the QuickBooks account, on the left side of the screen, you'll see a taxes option. You'll click into there. Once this is actually just recently changed. Before you could just click this setup sales tax. It would allow you to say, yes, I'd like to opt into it and enable it. So this process may change when you go to do this, but as of right now, there are a few extra steps that you need to do to enable this. The first thing is these generic tax settings. You're going to want to uncheck these. This is saying to mark all new customers as taxable and mark all new products and services taxable. Since Chargify is the one determining what items are taxable and at what tax rate, you don't want to have these checked, because then everything that comes into QuickBooks will be marked as taxable when that potentially isn't the case. Let's say you have like a shipping charge that you don't charge taxes for. If you had these enabled when it got synced to QuickBooks, those would be marked as taxable, and you don't want that. And then the last little bit to get this set up, you actually have to create just a generic tax rate. But again, since Chargify is the one going to be creating these, this is just, you can delete this afterwards. So I would just create a placeholder tax and then this will allow you to save. You can't save it without that. So this is just to get into the tax settings and actually save it out. Once you're done with that though, you can go ahead and go in and delete that tax rate you set up. By doing that, you go in to click add edit tax rates and agencies. You'll see the one you set up as just an example. So you can click the radio button on it and click deactivate. All right, so those are the steps to set up taxes. At this point now, if you didn't need the other 2 settings we're going to go through, you'd be able to set up your Chargify integration and sync over with taxes. Next, we're going to go to set up the classes and the multi-currency options. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see this little cog wheel. You'll click that, and then you'll click into your account and settings option. Once there, on the left side, you'll see an advanced tab. You'll click into that, and both of these options are actually on this tab. The first one is this track classes option. You'll click the off button, and it'll allow you to check the box for track classes. You likely don't want to do this warn me when transaction isn't assigned a class. We're going to be syncing classes on every transaction, so this isn't really necessary. I mean, each organization may have different uses in QuickBooks, so you potentially need this. If you do, check it, but it works either way. And then you'll want to decide which option to use, either one class per the entire transaction or one for each row. My recommendation would be to use the entire transaction option, since sales receipts are going to come over from the site and the subdomain will get filled in. That's what gets placed in the class, so you know what site it came from. You don't need it for each row, since every row will be part of the same site. You can't have a product from one site and a quantity component from another. They're all going to be from the same site. So just to kind of streamline everything, my recommendation would be to one for the entire transaction. Then you'll go ahead and click save. All right, once that's enabled, next is turning on multi-currency support. You'll see this in the currency section here. You'll click the off and check the checkbox next to multi-currency. This is an option that once enabled can't be turned off, so you may want to review the QuickBooks documentation on on the reasons for that, or the potential issues with enabling this. But if you are going to be syncing more than one currency into QuickBooks, you will have to enable this. I'm going to click the I understand and click save. And it'll reload, and the next option that we need to do is go in and make sure all of the currencies we're going to be syncing are in the currencies section. So once on, you click manage currencies. I believe by default they'll put Canadian dollars and euros in there, but if you need to add other currencies, just click the add currency box in the upper right hand corner. You can find the currency you want. Let's say we want to put a pound in there, click add, and it'll add it in the list. So you'll just need to go through each currency you're going to be syncing and make sure that it is added to the list there. All right, I'm going to sign out of this since the next step we're going to do is enable it in Chargify, and I want to show you the sign-in process for that. So let's get back into the PowerPoint. All right, so to enable this in Chargify, you're going to navigate to your Integrations tab. Once there, on the left-hand side, you'll see an option for QuickBooks Online, and then from there, you'll be able to enable it within your account. Let's go ahead and show you those steps here. So I'm logged into my Chargify account here. You'll navigate to the Integrations tab. Once there, click QuickBooks Online, and then all you have to do is click this Enable QuickBooks Online Integration. Next, it's going to be a 4-step process to get your account authenticated to make sure you're syncing to the right QuickBooks account. So you'll click Begin Your Automation. Step 2 is just making you connect your QuickBooks to Chargify. So click this button and it'll go ahead and navigate you to the login step so you can choose what account that you want to sync to. So I'm going to choose this one here. We'll fill that in. Once signed in, it's going to load and take you to the step to authenticate Chargify to your QuickBooks account. Just make sure it's the right QuickBooks account here. Then click Authorize. Once it's authorized, it'll redirect you back into Chargify, and from here you get to choose what gets synced. So by default, you can import all of your historical Chargify data. You can import Chargify data since a certain date. So like if you wanted to just go from the 1st of 2017, you can. Or you can decide not to import any historical data, which means once the sync is enabled, everything from that point on will get synced to QuickBooks. The last little bit here is choosing the income account that all the sales receipts that get generated in QuickBooks will be assigned to. By default, we'll create our own income account, just called the Chargify Clearing Account, and that'll be assigned. However, you do have the option to choose any of the other income accounts in your QuickBooks account to sync into. Next, you just click Send Options and continue the last step. And if successful, you'll see this message, and within about 5 minutes, things should start syncing over. For merchants that have been with us for a bit longer, it may take up to an hour to get the data synced over if you have a lot of historical data to work through. So if you don't see anything within about an hour, feel free to submit a support ticket to support@chargify.com, and we can take a closer look at that for you. All right. We're now connected, so we will look at an example of a transaction in Chargify and the one in QuickBooks, then we'll dive into QuickBooks and show you some other examples as well. So this is a standard renewal of a product that has a quantity-based component. Both items are taxable, so there is a tax rate getting applied, and then you can see that there was a successful payment on this renewal. Now, what shows up in QuickBooks is we see the base plan, which is our base product. We see the quantity-based component as well. This lines up. We see the 8.25% tax rate at $2.23, which we also see in Chargify. And then we see the amount received, which is $29.23, which matches to what was received in Chargify. So let's jump out of PowerPoint again, and let's log into a new QuickBooks account so we can take a look at some further examples of different items that have been synced over. I think I'm going to need to log out again since we signed in to start the sync. So we'll sign out and we'll sign back in. Once in your QuickBooks Online account, on the left-hand side, you'll see a tab for sales. You can see that here. That's going to be where all of the sales receipts end up syncing into your account. Before we dive into the sales, which is in the All Sales tab here, I do want to touch on the Customers tab real quick. One thing I mentioned earlier is that we sync on email address, and while that is true, QuickBooks Online requires the display name, which is a combination of the first and the last name of a customer, to be unique. So if you were to have two John Smiths in your Chargify account, both with different emails, so we have johnsmith1 and johnsmith2@gmail.com, both of them are named John Smith. If these get synced over, if we didn't change the display name at all, it would merge them into a single customer, and that's not what you'd want since these are two unique customers. So what we had to do is merge in the customer ID onto the end of the name to make sure that the display name was unique and it generated a new customer. And again, this is a limitation of QuickBooks since they require display name to be unique. So you'll see this here. We had 3 people named John Smith. John Smith was created, and then 2 other ones were created with the customer ID appended onto the end. You, of course, can go in and edit these customer records after the fact, but it will have to be unique. So this would maybe have to be John Smith 1, and maybe this would have to be John Smith 2. So we'll go back over to the Sales tab here. We'll look at a few items that of all the different kind of paid sales we talked about earlier of what would happen and what they would look like when they got synced over. So we will take a look here. We can see the class was filled in here with the subdomain of where this originated from. This was a standard product renewal. We can see the dates in which it was for. There's no quantity-based components. It wasn't taxable. So we can just see the amount that we received was 100 euros. Now we'll go into one that's a little bit more, got some more stuff going on here. We'll see in the class this was filled out with QB-demo. This means it came from a different site than the one we just saw. So that's how you can differentiate between the multiple sites syncing in here. This very top line here, we see a quantity-based component getting allocated from 0 to 10 allocations. This, and it's also prorated, if you can tell, with the $6.92 instead of it being $10, since each one of these is $1 items. This was a mid-period component allocation that was set to accrue instead of charge right away. So this got pushed to the next renewal date. The renewal occurred for the base product. We were charged again for the quantity-based component, which is correct. So the mid-period got pushed to the next renewal, and then at renewal we still had 10 allocated, so we were charged for those 10. And then we also had some metered usage. So you can see how each one of those line items comes over and it's broken down. One other thing I want to note here, this reference number is always going to be associated with the transaction record in Chargify. So if you needed to quickly go and reference the transaction that occurred in Chargify, you can grab this ID and go into your Chargify account and find the associated transaction. None of these items were taxable, so this was the amount that was collected at this renewal. The next one we're going to look at here was a mid-period component allocation that was charged right away, so it wasn't set to accrue. So this component was enabled mid-period. It was, I believe, prorated, but it was collected right away. However, this component was taxable, and we'll see that it was marked taxable at a custom tax rate of 9%, and we can see the taxes collected there. This next one on the list is the example that we saw in the PowerPoint presentation. So you'll see that it was just a base plan and a quantity-based component, all taxable. And then this last one I want to show you is a one-time charge. So you'll see this is a one-time payment, and it will bring over the memo for that one-time payment in the description field. It'll show the amount that you charged, and then if you can, of course, make one-time payments taxable if you want, but this one in particular was not. Now, once everything is synced over into QuickBooks, every single product and component and one-time charges will be created as a product or service in QuickBooks. From doing this, it'll actually allow you to come in here and edit these products and services to be associated with different income accounts for reporting purposes in QuickBooks. So you can come in and say if this product was really associated with the sales income account, You can also update all the historical transactions. So this will allow you to update everything retroactively. And then once you save it and close, everything moving forward for that product will also be categorized that way. So this is for every single unique product component, and then one-time charges will all be part of their own products or service. They get synced over as its own kind of like product level. All right, so those are the examples. Let's talk a little bit about pricing. In the advanced plans and higher, it's included for free, so you'll be able to enable that. For essential plans and all the older Chargify plans, it is a $99 a month add-on. I do want to note that's not per site, that's for your account. So once it's enabled, you can sync as many sites as you'd like to QuickBooks Online.